Kick this off. Are you ready?
Yes, of course.
Of
I was
course
born ready.
You really are, aren't you? Alrighty. Day 23. We're still in Christmas horror territory. So, we've got some more bizarre entities that we need to talk about. Ligeia, take us away.
We're starting with a dead horse.
Oh, yes, the Welsh tradition.
Yes. So, I would like to briefly explain why it's a dead horse. Because usually it's a goat, and we will come to the goat. There is another Yule goat in here. But the Welsh tradition has a horse skull. Before we go into that, horses are symbols of the sun and dogs are symbols of the moon. You can see that, for example, in tarot cards. So the tarot card that is called the sun usually has 1 or 2 horses in it, and the tarot card for the moon has 1 or 2 dogs in it. So this Welsh custom takes place during the 12 days of Christmas, and in the last video we've learned about the stagnant darkness. So based on that, a dead horse means the sun is dead, and that is exactly what's happening during those 12 days. The sun has stopped moving. That's why it's a dead horse.
That's clever. That's clever.
Right. So I thought this was pronounced Lwyd, and most people think, yeah, everyone thought so. The English authorities from the year 1800 on thought it was pronounced somewhat like Mary, but it's not. I've looked it up, so apparently it is pronounced Evari Lwyd.
Evari. Just interesting. Evari Lwyd. Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
I didn't know that. I hope I don't mispronounce it in a way that it can be interpreted as sexual innuendo in Welsh. We wouldn't want to do that.
But if we have said anything inappropriate in Welsh, could somebody please let us know?
Yes. I will apologize.
No, it'd just be funny. I want to know what you might have said.
Oh. Okay. So, based on this problem with the word Mary or Ivari, the English interpreted this as meaning Holy Mary, and that is simply not true. What it actually means is grey mare. So, Ivari or Mari in this case, you could translate that as mare, and Lwyd is a Welsh word that means grey. For example, the name Lwyd means the grey one.
Oh.
Welsh name, and it refers to a color. So what actually is this Ivari Lwyd stuff? It's a wassailing custom during the 12 days of Christmas, as I said, in southern Wales. And wassailing is similar to mumming, to what's happening in England around that time. A person hidden under a white sheet carries a pole with a horse skull that is decorated with ribbons. And it's a group of men, so it's similar to the guys who are pranking everyone around Christmas time. We've seen that in other countries. They travel around with their mock horse, usually covering one village or like some cottages in a bigger neighborhood. And they typically have a leader, a horse bearer, a merry man, one who plays music, that is, and some folklore characters like Punch and Judy too. So they go from house to house, they sing, and they demand to be let in. And what follows is probably the origin of epic rap battles, because the house owners have to deny them entry, but in the form of a song. So this group shows up, and they're probably already drunk at that point, because they want to get into every house, and they demand to be fed, and they demand to be given alcohol. So they show up in front of your door, and they're singing, and they're trying to get in. So you have to sing back at them and tell them why they should get lost. I want to see that.
That does sound pretty fun.
Yes. So this musical battle goes back and forth until one party gives up. So in some cases, the singers who are walking with their horse, they can give up. And I imagine that probably happens when they're already too drunk. So think about it when they've covered a couple of houses or maybe half the village and they got their drinks everywhere, then they're probably tired and they'll just go. If the house owner gives up, he has to allow the group in and give them food and drinks. And while they're in the house, they dance around with the mock horse. They neigh like horses. They wreak havoc. They frighten children and pretend to try and calm down the horse, but of course they're only making it wilder.
Wow. Kind of.
Again, this
kind
is
goofy.
Oh.
Kind of goofy and mean.
This is something that the church tried to ban, as usual, with all these heathen traditions. And the skull can be made of wood or paper if you don't have an actual horse skull. So that was more common in earlier times because, in the 1800s, there were just skulls of all kinds of animals available. And nowadays, it's kind of difficult to get. So if you don't have a historical one, it might be difficult to find one. In some cases, they have fixed the jaw so it can be opened and closed with strings or wires. And they sometimes put glass shards in the eye sockets that represent eyes. And their groups are around 4 to 7 men strong. So not as many as during that Silvesterklausen event in Switzerland, maybe because Welsh villages are smaller. They march at dusk and they keep going late into the night. It's definitely a pre-Christian tradition. And the white sheet that they use for the horse represents death. And I think you've seen the word nightmare. You've maybe used it before.
I'm sure more than 1,000 times, yeah.
Nightmare is actually the mare or the horse that appears at night.
Oh.
And one common thing is that during a nightmare, you often have a feeling that someone or something is sitting on your chest. And it's a heavy weight that makes it difficult for you to breathe. So literally, like a horse is sitting on you.
Yeah, people tend to tie that with a sleep paralysis, don't they?
Right. So you have that in Germanic folklore. There is a being that is called Mar. And Mar is literally the being that causes nightmares. It doesn't have to be a horse. It can also appear as a goblin or an old woman. So sleep paralysis demons are very commonly older women. Spooky older women, I should say. And it's related to the Sanskrit word from India, Mara. And I know that exists as a name for women, but Mara means literally demon. Choose your kids' names wisely.
Oh my goodness.
Noah
Well,
Mara?
that's I personally don't, but if there's somebody named Mara watching this, hey, you should comment down below and let us know, because you might not have known what your name means, but I'm so sorry if we've kind of blown your mind just now, and might change a few of your outlooks on life. I totally understand. We're here for you.
Yes, and then you have people commenting, I always knew I was a demon. I was meant for this.
Explains a lot now.
Okay, some more representations. So here you can see Ivari Lwyd with the sheet. Sometimes it has horse ears. You can see the ribbons. And yeah, it's a very old tradition. So you have one picture down below the almost the last. that is in black and white, where you can see that people are standing around in historical clothes with top hats and so on. So even at that point, they were leading their horse around. And it looks really, really spooky. So in the fifth picture, you have an Ivari Lwyd that apparently has green eyes. And I thought it would be spookier without the eyes, but the green-eyed one, that is nightmare fuel.
Pretty spooky.
Looks like, with this sheet, it looks like Mother Teresa, but with a skull, a horse skull, isn't it?
It looks exactly like Mother Teresa if she had a horse skull.
Yay! So
Wow.
we have a very similar custom, and that too exists in southern Germany. It's connected to Bertha's followers, because what I didn't tell you is that Bertha's followers actually have a pet.
Oh yeah. It's not a dead horse by chance, is it?
No.
That would have been pretty weird.
No, it's a dead goat.
Ah. Still weird. Okay.
Yes. So this is called the Habergeist. And both of these words mean goat. The first one, Haber, means male goat, and the second one, Geist, means female goat. So this is the gender fluid goat demon.
Gender fluid goat demon. Well, I think I know the title of this video now.
Oh my god. But it's not really gender fluid. It's just both, you know.
Yeah.
And they can be black or white. And as you can see, there is a very simple one. But nowadays the costumes are often very elaborate. So they look like very good furry costumes. This is an echo of the Yule goat in North Germanic areas. So the West Germanic areas like England, Netherlands, and Germany, they also used to have this tradition with the Yule goat, but it got pushed away by the Christianization of Central Europe and of the British Isles. So the West Germanic people mostly lost the Yule goat and the Yule traditions. But this is something that still relates to it. So it's not very close to the North Germanic areas. I would suspect that this should take place in northern Germany, for example, because there's the connection with Denmark. But weirdly enough, it survived in the Alps, in Bavaria, for example. So this gender fluid goat is related to Thor's goats, and it's a female. So although it has both sexes in the name, they usually call it a female, because the word goat in German is a female word. Remember, this is a gendered language, so cats are always female and goats are also always female.
Right. Dogs would be male then?
Yes. Yes. Foxes are male.
Horses?
Even tables have a grammatical gender, so tables are male.
Well,
horses are neutral.
Horses? How does that work? What?
Our friend Mark Twain, the alien who came with a comet and left with a comet, he had something to say about the German language, and he wrote a book. I think it's titled The Horrifying German Language. So he found out that the word Mädchen, which means girl, in German is neutral. It's not female, it's neutral. But there is another word, Rübe. This means turnip. So this word is female. And Mark Twain hated this, and he wrote in his book, it's incredible that a young girl is genderless in German, but a turnip is female.
Or a table has a gender.
Yes, and trees, and everything has a gender.
I feel like plant life, I can understand why that would, quote unquote, have a gender. But when it's like an inanimate object, that's where I'm very confused. But
Yeah.
we'll delve into that another time, I'm sure. But the Mark Twain thing she mentioned. If you haven't seen it, Advent Day number 3, I think it was, Star of Bethlehem.
Right. Exactly. So yes, this is actually the case in all gendered languages. So in French, horses are always male, for example. It's le cheval.
Hmm.
Or in Russian, dogs are always female. So every dog in Russia is a bitch. It's sabaka, and that is a female word. It's difficult to understand for people who don't have gendered language. So for English people and for Chinese people. English has some parallels with modern Chinese, actually. And English used to be a gendered language, but you gave that up.
Yeah.
Probably because it was too confusing.
Yeah, we didn't want to go down. I mean, there is a good level of logic behind gendered languages, especially when it comes to like learning some of the grammatical like methods and stuff. It becomes much easier to learn when you comprehend that. But I think it just it can confuse your mind when you have to treat almost everything as one gender or another. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. So, do you speak some other language, like Spanish, for example? You said that you spent some time in Spain.
I do speak a bit of Spanish. I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I do comprehend the majority of conversations that are going on. I can usually have a little bit of a conversation. I wouldn't say I could have like a full on conversation.
Oh, okay. That's great. So, comment in Spanish.
Por favor.
Just for Nate. But then you know the problem with the gendered languages, so it's not any different here. The goat demon is a demon with horse hooves, so it doesn't have typical goat hooves. Probably because they're actually playing that character, so they're walking around in costumes, and goat hooves are just very, very small and difficult to replicate when you have giant human feet. So a horse hoof covers that better. And it also has bird elements. As a pet of Bertha's followers, it runs around with them, and especially on December the 5th, which is Krampus Day, and December the 6th, which is St. Nicholas's Day.
Mm.
As you can see, the costume is usually more elaborate than the sheet they use in Wales, but it's a similar tradition. So they're also walking around this spooky animal. And it's like Bertha's followers, it's about 6 to 7 feet tall. It can have a wicker basket on its back, so it's not thought to be an ordinary animal. And allegedly, the goat collects and carries off unruly children in that wicker basket.
A lot of common themes going on in our stories.
Yeah, again, it's the punishment thing.
Mm.
So let me give you a close up. That is a headshot, and you can see the wire in the mouth. So
Yeah.
they can also move the jaw, like in the Ivari Lwyd celebration. It usually has glowing eyes, a long beard, and a coat that is made of bird feathers. Sometimes it can have 3 legs in depictions. And when you run into that goat, then it's a bad omen. So don't do that. Have Befana sweep your floor instead of running into the goat. And there is a Romanian version that is very, very similar. It's called capra, and capra is literally the Latin word for goat. So, yeah. Yay, let's go to Iceland. And I told you that Finland is insane, but Iceland is too.
Hopefully in the same kind of ballpark. I'm excited.
Charming lady here is called Gryla, or Grilla, probably. And there's a reason why there are kids in the cauldron. Can you imagine why?
I get the feeling she cooks naughty kids.
Yes, she makes a child's Christmas stew, and it's not for children, it consists of children.
Right. Is it specifically naughty kids though, or is it just like all kids?
Well, I think the naughty ones taste better, but she walks around during Christmas time and she tries to collect kids. So she just likes the taste of kids, and they don't even have to be bad kids. But of course, you would tell your kids that if you're bad, then you're tastier for her.
Unlike in Hansel and Gretel, where they just came upon her house and she was just going to cook them because she just likes eating kids.
Yes, and I mean they had tried to destroy her house. They had eaten the gingerbread from her walls.
That's true. That's true.
It's kind of Willy Wonka, You have Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and the kids can eat everything in the factory, but the witch in Hansel and Gretel is probably a relative of Willy who doesn't appreciate it when you eat the sugar sticks in her garden.
Yeah, the Willy Wonka movies would be very different if, while the kids were eating his factory, for example, he decides, you know what, I'm going to turn them into chocolate.
Oh, there is a spooky punk music video where Willy Wonka invites people to his factory, and then he uses them to make chocolate. Like he runs them through a blender, and then he uses the blood to make chocolate.
Blood chocolate. Okay, great.
Yes, so that exists. He's sort of a vampire in that video. Okay.
Always
Let's go back to Gryla. So
yes.
I'm going to call her Gryla. I know that the Icelandic word is probably Grilla or something like that. But again, I'm doing this for consistency because I will trip over it. I see the Y, and I'm going to pronounce the Y as an English Y when I speak English. So that would trip me up if I kept saying Grilla or something like that. She is an enormous, disgusting troll woman from pre-Christian times, and she became connected to Christmas celebrations, but only in the 17th century. So she has been around since at least the 13th century, probably older, because the documents she's mentioned in, they only showed up in the 13th century, because a lot of people couldn't read or write before that. And it's the same with continental law. When I tell you that, for example, Bertha has been documented since the 11th century, that doesn't mean that is her actual age, but that means that people in the 11th century started to read and write. So before that, it would have been difficult for them to document this in written form. She is described as a beggar woman, and she usually walks around in villages and asks people to give her their disobedient children. And she doesn't say that she wants to eat them, but she eats them. So when you see her, you need to chase her away. And sometimes you can feed her with food that isn't little kids. So similar to the Kalikantsaroi that we talked about. Sometimes you can just throw a donut at her or something.
Or sausages or whatever you got lying around, right?
Right. That doesn't always work, but you can try. She lives in a cave in the mountains, and again we have the topic of the Snow Queen here. And a lot of these witches and Snow Queens and so on, they live in the mountains. And in her case, it's specifically a cave. She mostly moves around in villages during Christmas time. And she will also catch misbehaving children if she finds any of them out. So that is also similar to the Kalikantsaroi. You shouldn't go out in the dark during the 12 days of Christmas, for example, because Gryla will catch you. She actively hunts for them, and she carries them back home in a sack. And although she is really, really disgusting, and although she's a cannibal, she has been married 3 times.
Really?
Yes, and husband number 3 is still around, but he's really a deadbeat husband and father because he doesn't like to leave the cave, so he lets her walk around, and their sons are living with them. So these are the sons from the 3rd marriage. She has tons of kids from the first 2 marriages, and it's not entirely clear what happened to husband number 1 and husband number 2. So maybe she got peckish at night and she accidentally put them in the cauldron or something. I'm not sure. Okay.
I was surprised by husbands, but then you also said they had children, and you know what? Good for her.
It's dark in that cave.
Oh god. Yeah, they'd have to at least look at each other, I guess. Oh god. But then their eyes would adjust. It's all bad.
Her husband number 3 has a name. He's called Lepaluzi, and there is a weird letter in that, the second to last. That is the thorn letter, and you have that in English. You don't write it like that, but it is one of the 2 THs that you have in English.
Okay.
You have 2 versions of TH. And you would know that as a second language learner, but people who are native speakers usually are not aware that there are 2 versions. We can do a video on this, but for now, I need to show you her sons. She has 13 sons, and she has a giant cat. So she also has a monstrous pet.
Okay. 13 kids.
Yes. She and husband number 3 were busy, and she has even more.
Oh god. Oh.
Don't think about it.
Ah,
Don't want to
Lagaya,
give a
how can
night.
I not think about it? Oh.
They're called the Yule lads.
That's awesome. They look normal. What?
Yes, they're not even that ugly, so her husband must be really hot, you know.
To just like somehow balance out the. Oh god. Okay, carry on.
He's probably blind. So there is a description of them, and they come at different times. So the first one shows up on December the 12th, and he leaves on Christmas Day, the 25th. The second one appears on the 13th, leaves on the 26th, and so on. So then 14, 15, 16, and so on. And the last one, let me see, the last one is known as the Candle Beggar. He shows up on Christmas Eve, the 24th, and he leaves on January the 6th.
Right.
So they have weird names, and I've sent you an overview. This is taken straight from Wikipedia.
That's perfect.
As you can see, they have funny names, and you can see the Icelandic names in the first column, and then the translation. So the translations would be Sheepcoat Clod and Gully Gawk and Stubby and Spoonlicker and so on. So yeah, she has a little perv running around who's known as the Window Peeper.
Oh god.
Be careful between December the 21st and January the 3rd. Okay, those are their names. And they, unsurprisingly, are 13 pranksters. So this again is an overlap with all the pranksters from other areas in Europe. They only come out during Christmas time and harass people, so there is a theory that Gryla and her family have been banned from villages, because in older stories they usually live somewhere in the village, but in more recent stories they live in the mountains in that cave. So it's possible that people had enough of them and just removed them from human society. Yeah, and they walk into those villages and towns. They have names that reflect their favorite method of stealing from people or pranking them. The Spoonlicker, for example, will search for cookie batter spoons and lick them clean. Then you have a pot scraper, and you have a sausage swiper and a doorway sniffer. Yeah, those are their names. And originally, these Yule lads helped their mother to steal children for her child Christmas stew. They don't do that anymore, but nowadays they leave gifts in children's shoes. So, they're gift givers now, and they leave rotten potatoes in the shoes of bad kids.
It's different than
Which
coal.
means they are not the most horrifying thing here. Their mom is, but there is another horrifying thing. We'll get into that. Any questions?
About these boys? No. Oh, well, actually, no. So yeah, actually, I kind of do have one. Do you know when these drawings kind of happened?
No, I couldn't tell you, but some of them are stamps, as you can see. So I think
Yeah.
those would have been more recent. I
Because
think that
there's a fair similarity to those in like the Snow White Seven Dwarves concept, right?
yes, I could imagine 1800s and 1900s, some of them.
Could be a bit of inspiration. That's all I'm thinking.
Okay, good. More horrifying than the lads, and arguably maybe even more horrifying than Gryla, is Gryla's pet. And there is an Icelandic film dealing with it.
Oh, he's big.
It's the Yule cat.
Does not care if you were naughty or mice. Oh my god.
It's great. So let me show you some more pictures. So this is legitimately Gryla's pet. And the Icelandic word for it is jólakötturinn.
Oh my goodness. This is the Yule cat, huh?
Yes. We do have a Yule cat, not just the Yule goat, and not just a Yule log. We have a full-on Yule cat.
Amazing.
So, it lurks around in the snow around Christmas time and eats children who don't get new clothes for Christmas. And you would think that children who don't get new clothes for Christmas are already punished enough.
Yeah.
But there is a backstory. So you remember what I said about Bertha, that she gets really angry when you don't do your winter work, when you don't spin wool during the winter, right?
Yeah.
So in Iceland, you have a similar tradition. And again, when you look at that map that we had, the North Germanic and West Germanic areas, Germany is in the West Germanic areas and Iceland is in the North Germanic areas. But there is some overlap between the mythologies of both countries because they're all Germanic countries. So they have similar mythologies. And in Iceland, you have a similar situation as in Bavaria. Only children who help to process the wool that they've collected during the year and finish in time get new clothes. So you have to work during Christmas time. You have to process the wool in time for the festivities. And if you don't, you get eaten by a monstrous cat demon.
Well, capitalism would love that.
Well, it's just how farmers worked back in the days. So, from their point of view, a child without new clothes is a lazy child. Because if the child had worked properly, then it would have gotten new clothes for its work.
Right.
Yeah, it's really motivating kids to work. And it's similar to the situation.
Labor.
Similar to the situation with the talking animals in the stables. They were trying to motivate kids to go out in the dark and take care of the animals.
Dangerous child labor.
In this case, don't go out in the dark.
But your kids can.
Yes. If they're good kids. You have to keep those inside who are not good kids.
Oh my god.
Well, keep your spoiled brother inside. You can go and feed the animals. So, the Yule cat doesn't have a long tradition. So, it was first mentioned in 1862 by Jón Arnason. there is nothing before that hinting at the cat, and that is not surprising because cats are not Icelandic animals. They're not native to Northern Europe at all. Cats were domesticated in Egypt, and they were known in the Roman Empire during the Roman Empire, and from there started moving northward. But they didn't reach some areas before modern times. So you can say that there were probably no cats during medieval times in Iceland. Which means it's not part of the North Germanic law of Iceland, but it's something that came up in the second half of the 19th century by an author. But it has made it to become an official holiday symbol since 1932, because this author, Jon Andersson, wrote a Yule cat poem that is very well known in Iceland. And she doesn't just eat children, she is also an animal that carries around one of the Yule lads, because there is one Yule lad that is called Stubby. He's the smallest of the bunch. And he can be seen riding the cat through the countryside.
Oh, that's nice.
And that tells you how enormous the cat is. Because as you can see, climbs around on roofs. It's almost as big as the house. And the Yule lads themselves, they're not small because their mom is a troll, so their dad probably too. So they're at least the size of Hagrid.
Wow. A couple of Hagrids running around doing weird fucking things in your house. It's pretty horrifying thought. Peeping windows and sniffing doors.
Oh my god. Yes, some Harry Potter fans have already said, why do the children visit this loner who lives in the hut in the forest? Like, why doesn't Dumbledore do anything about this?
Oh, well, Hagrid's a nice guy, you know? He's a groundskeeper.
Yes. Yes, but now I imagine his mom shouting over him, "Stop riding the cat! Bring me some child stew!" Ouch. Okay. Very recently, this cat became known in the rest of the world. So only since the year 2008, people outside of Iceland have understood that there is a Yule cat. It became so popular in some countries abroad that in 2018, the city of Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, installed an iron statue of it that is 5 meters tall. So here you can see it in daylight, but also illuminated during the night. That is the Yule cat statue in the city center of Reykjavik.
Ooh. Wow.
And they did this because tourists kept asking. Yeah, that is day 23, Yule Spook. And tomorrow is the day when we will talk about Krampus, and everyone has been waiting for this, I'm sure. And after this, we will watch a short film. It's only 7 minutes long. It will happen on Discord. And I think we will record this so we can play it on YouTube.
Yeah, we could probably do it live. In which case we might do the Yule Cat film as well, because that's a short film. Maybe we'll get a little collection of like Christmassy horror short films and stuff like that, and we'll watch it as a little live stream. I think that'll be fun.
Yes, okay. We can do that, but that is day 23, so beware of the monstrous troll cats, and remember, if you're lazy, you're not getting any clothes, so you become prey to the cat.
Horrifying. Day 23. Thank you to the YouTube and Patreon members who've been supporting this channel so far. This has been a fantastic effort. Thank you so much. I couldn't do any of this without your support, really. I really can't. Thank you. Patreon now has exclusive ad-free videos. I know, quite a cool benefit, I gotta say. Can't do it on YouTube, sadly, just on Patreon only. It's a whole thing. There are many ways to support the channel, but becoming a member is probably one of the best ones. Support us today.